This is Coder Radio, episode 34 for January 28th, 2013. Hi everyone, and welcome to Coder Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, Michael Dominic. Hey there, Michael.
I feel like I'm in a dream within a dream listening to Coder Radio.
It's a magical thing that only live people ever know about. Nobody will ever suspect that we might have started over again. I don't think so. There's no indication. Now, I gotta warn people, both you and I were kind of stuck in first gear today. Just a little bit. I woke up with a raging cold, and you woke up with, clients smacking you in the face. Did they actually come to your house and smack you in the face?
Actually, it wasn't the client. It was just an enraged developer.
Who is working with the client.
Yeah, who doesn't like the VPS host.
So he's got to call and chew you out first thing in the morning?
And I'm just, yeah.
That's one way to start a show.
Sad part is he's in a different time zone, so it was in fact earlier for him.
Wow, he was really motivated to talk to you.
He was really mad.
You must have really needed a stern talking to.
Because I have nothing to do with the VPS host. This is the best part. But
right,
yeah,
right.
It's been a lovely day so far.
Well, so let's shake things off with this week's episode. What are we talking about today?
We are talking about the end. The end of all things.
Uh-oh. Like the end of the show?
The end of the show, the end of Linux, the end of LAS, the end of everything.
The end of software development.
It's over.
Well, again, and then I guess it makes sense the show would end.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's all over.
Well, I can't wait to talk about that. We also have a tool of the week, which is making a reappearance, which we've had some requests for, so I think people will be excited about that. And,
I didn't realize that's a reappearance. Whoops.
What? No, not the pick.
Oh.
No, just that we haven't had a tool for a couple of weeks, and we got like a couple of tweets that were like, "Hey, where's the pick? Where's the pick?" Kind of like, "Where's the beef?" You know, only we don't actually put beef out there. And then, of course, like every episode, we have a little bit of feedback to start with, don't we?
Yes, I did reply to a lot of it directly this week, because I think a lot of people are actually out of sync with the current episodes.
Yeah, they fall behind and catch up.
So sometimes if they're behind, I just reply directly.
But then we don't have as much for the show.
What's good, though? Short is good.
I like the feedback.
Oh, yeah, I know you do. So Not Brian is taking Intro to Software Development.
Oh.
Intro to Software Engineering, and is learning about project management. Yay! More seriously, he asked, does Chris have any advice on not being a, quote, evil PM?
Seems like the only way to do that would be to actually know the job. Not the PM job.
I would say step one is shave off the handlebar mustache. Make sure you don't twirl it.
I don't think you get your PMO diploma without that.
Oh, really? Is that part of the
they check
part
that.
of the deal?
It's a litmus test.
No, but really, just know what you're talking about and try not to be a tool.
Yeah.
Project management's hard, and I can't.
But when you say try to know what you're talking about, that's what I'm talking about right there. It's like, don't you kind of have to have to really be able to empathize with what the developer has to be able to pull off? Don't you kind of have to have an understanding of the task and what's involved with the task?
Yeah, because I think, and this is just a thought, bad PMs aren't really bad at their job. I guess they are by definition, but they're bad at setting expectations both for themselves and for higher-ups.
Right. They don't understand why that expectation might be unreasonable.
Right. And sometimes it all comes down to expectations, right?
Yeah.
That's when people get upset. So I would say, if your developer tells you can get it done in a week, tell the ultimate client 2 weeks, week and a half, because estimates usually aren't worth anything.
It's for your own good, too, because that kind of comes back on you if you blow the project timeline.
Yeah.
So, well, good luck, Not Brian.
Jimmy has a problem.
Uh-oh, Jimmy, what's up?
Jimmy writes, I tend to get too serious with too many projects at the same time. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. I was already working on porting an application almost at completion, but now my Raspberry Pi has arrived.
Uh-oh.
That's not good. He also has a blog that I linked in the show notes that he'd like to share.
So he's also blogging.
He's also blogging.
He's got a spoil of riches.
Yeah, I have this problem too. Jimmy, I don't think it's a problem. More coding is fun, right?
Yeah, but don't you want to be able to commit yourself something and see it all the way through?
Yeah, you do. I mean, one thing to say is, what are your goals? Are you trying to make a commercial product, trying to revolutionize operating systems, trying to DDoS JupyterBroadcasting.com? I mean, just
What?
just put yourself to a goal and really stick with it.
Well, and I would suggest maybe this to Jimmy is maybe he's the type of personality that tries on a lot of things, and then whichever one really he gets traction on and really enjoys, that's the one he'll pull ahead
Yeah.
on. Maybe, potentially. And so the sort of the best bubbles to the top after time. You might take longer going down all these different avenues, but you're trying multiple things at once. Like I'll tell you, for me, when I decided I went from not knowing anything about video production to deciding I was going to do 6 high definition shows a week and distribute them on the internet. Like that's to me when I thought that up, that didn't sound that tough. It's just technology, but there was actually a ton to learn there. And at once, I was trying to learn how to do it on Windows, Linux, and Mac OS X. And I knew that if I just focused on one, I could learn it a lot faster and I could get the job done a lot faster. But I wanted to make sure that I was, sort of exposing myself to as much of the alternative methods as possible. And then eventually, I kind of clicked in on a track and then just went full hog on that path. And that might just be what happens to Jimmy.
Yeah, and I think that's probably good advice.
Horse battery staple, Mr. Dominic.
Horse battery staple.
That's a TechSnap joke, sorry.
Oh, I'm a little behind.
That's all right. That's all right. As you know from the feedback, it happens.
It does happen.
Well, good on you, Jimmy, for blogging. Just keep up.
Yeah,
It up.
keep blogging. I would say the Raspberry Pi is actually an interesting way to go because I've heard a lot about them being used in education.
Yeah. See, I look at it right now as just such a toy, but I know that's my old man.
You mean like the Nexus Q?
No, the Nexus Q was a flop.
Still bitter.
Still, you didn't even want one. You didn't even want one.
I know. How about the Ouya that should be arriving?
Aren't people
shortly?
people are getting it?
Yeah, you had to be at the higher tier. I'm excited.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll
I know.
see. I was on Kickstarter this weekend, just kind of collecting some interesting looking Kickstarter indie projects that are promising Linux support. And so many of them now, I was really actually kind of surprised, listed Ouya as one of their target platforms. Like they are promising Ouya support in the same feature and comparison line item that Android and iOS are listed.
Well, I think it's because the Ouya did so well on Kickstarter.
Ah, yes, fair point. See, that would so there's sort of a group bias there. Because I was looking at that going, is it really already this popular? Is there not? There can't be demand for it. I didn't even think of a Kickstarter angle. The whole Kickstarter thing's wild.
It is a little. Honestly, the Kickstarter thing scares me a little. I'm always a little.
Well, what just recently kind of happened to me, and I'm not really upset about it, but I funded a game that had a stretch goal for Linux support, and they didn't reach their stretch goal. So now I've paid for a Windows game that I'm probably not going to play.
Nice.
And
speaking of games, did you try the Cave yet? It's Mac and Linux and Windows.
No, I haven't. It's not out for Linux just yet. It's got another couple days.
Is it?
But I really, really am looking forward to the Cave. And I've been playing. Speaking of Cave, I've been playing Cave Story Plus.
Yeah, I have that one.
And I hooked it up with the controller pad, a little Logitech dual action controller. It's way better with the controller. I think this big picture thing from Steam with the controller, I think this could work. I also Rohard or Rock Hard or Roshard, that game that I go on and on about but don't know how to pronounce, also played with the controller. These are indie titles. The Roshard one is Unity powered, and I'm playing them on Linux with my controller. You know what? These side scrollers are awesome, and I'd play those on the big screen. I would absolutely play those on the big screen.
Yeah, I think big picture mode has a lot of potential. Yeah. All right. So today's topic is the end of things.
The end.
Now, this is actually inspired by recent events and very, very sad events. The bankruptcy of THQ.
Yeah.
Now, they are a gaming company, but that is a form of software development, right? They're in the overall umbrella.
Yeah.
I don't want to go into details because the whole bankruptcy, what they tried to do with that capital company, that in itself is an hour long. The end result is some people are losing their jobs, right? A lot of developers in particular. Now, the nice thing is they'll probably land on their feet because of how competitive the market is.
And didn't they get bought?
It's a little more complicated than that. I don't know how closely you followed it, though, right?
Not just kind of roughly.
different teams and different divisions got bought by different companies,
Oh,
but some did not.
that's sad.
The last I checked, the Darksiders 2 team is out on the street. But there are rumors that someone's looking into picking them up. But for instance, what is that our real time strategy game THQ had? I can't remember, but Sega bought them to a Company of Heroes, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so like Sega bought them. A few other developers, other publishers basically bought things that match their current portfolio.
Yeah.
So the point is, no one came in and just said, "Thank you, THQ. I have all of THQ now."
It's like they took a car and they just broke it up for parts.
Right, and they picked and choose, and some people are going to be left out in the cold. That's a sad story, and it got me thinking. Well, we're writing all this code. Whether it's embedded code like someone's asking in the chat, or apps like I write, or server code. It really doesn't last forever, or it's not intended to, right? We've gotten a lot of emails of people asking, should I write this in Java, or should I write this in, Ruby or Python or
Right.
C or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And one metric that I actually got this from one of the book picks, Mike Gunderloy's Coder to Developer. I believe this is where I stole this idea from. Whenever you're evaluating a solution, you might want to do, will this work for me a year from today, 2 years from today, and 3 years from today? Because the odds are, no matter what you pick, not really in 3 years, right? I'll give you a great example. There's a lot of crusty old PHP sites up there that are full of security holes that have been up there for 5 years, something like that. Java applets, great example. Will this work for me in 3 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Java applets are a big one.
To an extent, Ruby on Rails for a lot of startups when they had to scale and it wasn't quite what they had dreamed.
I've, personally, one problem I ran into a lot is PHP sites just over the years. Like, I'm talking a lot of years. PHP gets updated on the server, the actual PHP runtime, and there's little things that just break on the site over years. And then if you don't have the original guy around who created that, it's sort of like a hunting expedition to go figure it out.
Yeah, and one thing, so I don't do a lot of PHP, or I kind of avoid it, but I have a friend who does, and it's amazing. He tells me different PHP developers write radically different PHP.
I think that's a big part of it, yeah.
And I think that's also a lot of the problem because it lets you do virtually anything. Like it's very loose, is my understanding. That's not to say I've never written PHP, but not to hit this too hardly, but I actively avoid it.
Do you want to say why? Just that actually, or you can make an episode out of it.
PHP, I have two issues with it.
Okay.
A lot of it has something to do with the language. It's that some folks, a lot of the PHP developers, or especially greener ones, there's so much code out there, they do a lot of copy paste, and that creates a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I've heard that complaint. Yep, I've heard that.
And so I'm generally not into that. That's why I never really put forward to use PHP in a project. Now, a lot of the times PHP is already there, and usually the developers are pretty good. So it's not that there's something inherently wrong with people who choose PHP. It's that it's such a low barrier for entry for younger developers or newer developers that they do a lot of copy paste, and things can get a little rough. It's kind of like the JavaScript issues, right? It's more when people do things badly that it gets. But the problem is the bad is really bad. Additionally, it's just not my style.
I was just gonna say, I don't know if you wanted. I don't know if you felt this way, but I was told, and he's kind of a schmuck. But the thing he told me is, PHP was originally designed as a personal homepage language, and that's all you need to know about it.
No, I don't think that's fair, right? I mean, Alan uses PHP for Scale Engine, and it's just fine. If you know what you're doing, you can do a lot.
I mean, I totally agree. I mean, I've used PHP extensively. Yeah. PHP is probably, if there's anything that's quote unquote programming that I've done, PHP is the closest it is for me. That's about as skilled as I get, and I really have had no issues with it. But I have dealt with PHP site breakages in the past and things like that.
Yeah, and there's little. I guess it's the same as anything else. There are little exploits, little problems. but I don't even remember how we got here, to be honest with you. Actually, to be honest, I think a lot of it was my early career was doing Java website Java. Yes, I know it's evil, and yes, I apologize. And the culture there was very anti-PHP.
Oh, it's interesting.
Um,
I'm
it
not.
wasn't, quote, a real language, according to some of the people who were training me and teaching me at the time. So I think I've somehow, by osmosis, gotten their old biases. But it's an interesting conversation because I hear a lot of the same arguments now about like JavaScript. And then again, I mean, there's frameworks like PHP, and PHP is fine.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Um,
I wasn't. I mean, my site runs off
yeah,
PHP. I'm not trying to dog on
I mean,
PHP at all.
Scala engine runs on PHP. A lot of things run on PHP just
It's
fine.
just something I've picked up on more, and then I've been working with a guy who's revamping an old ASP site to this fancy, works across all browsers, responsive design, blah 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 blah, and he's just major anti PHP.
But see, those are the guys who love one platform, and they think the platform is going to solve all their problems. And it could just be the guy in question is perhaps a very good ASP developer and not a good PHP developer,
Yeah.
which is probably against some of my bias. I'm not an ASP developer, but
A lot of these people kind of like attach a little bit to their identity. They like it's like
yeah.
well, I have researched and decided in my experience with all of my intellect backing it tells me this is the best approach. And they get kind of all wrapped up in it. But it ain't no thing.
So I'm not sure how we got. Oh, right. Will this last for me in 3 years? Okay. So the idea is if you update your PHP and keep and just don't copy paste from Stack Overflow, you'll probably be fine. But your architecture with any language, Rails, PHP, Java Play, which is awesome, ASP, you're going to need to keep reevaluating it every couple of years. So this is something what's really interesting is I have some old applications using XML, and now I'm disgusted by XML.
Huh.
Because I feel that JSON is just much more terse.
Uh-huh.
But at the time, XML seemed like the be-all and end-all for
Right.
communication protocols.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. The point is that the end of one thing is the beginning of another. It's okay to, after 3 years or some length of time, reevaluate the solution you did. I'm not saying throw it in the bin and start over. How many times have we seen folks who don't update Java on their machine get exploited, or don't update PHP on their server, or don't even update the Linux kernel, or more accurately the distro, right?
Right. Right.
I mean, think about it. If everybody updated their stuff, TechSnap would be 15 minutes long.
Very true.
It's really simple, and the same thing could be said for not only the tools, which is, I would say, the stuff in quotes, but also the code you wrote. It may have made sense in 2001, but it's now 2013. Does it still make sense? Is it still the right way?
Right.
Right, and that's all we're getting.
Yeah.
And that's the point with that one line, which turned into 20 minutes.
That's what. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what we do.
that's how we roll, man. The docs are getting shorter and shorter and shorter.
That's an interesting point, and it kind of plays to the. It's sort of plays to something that is particularly of importance with software development. I mean, there's other things in the industry that don't really. I mean, everything like a server has to be. You have to come back on it and check it and revalidate it. But software development, because the platforms that the software runs on top of are moving, it's a little more susceptible to this. It's not quite the same as anything else that I can think of.
Yeah, and it's I would say between now and I don't expect to be using a lot of the same tools I'm using now in 5 years. It's just a matter of
Probably just Xcode. You're probably going to drop that in a fit of rage.
Have you heard of AppCode?
No, I have not heard
But
of AppCode.
it is an alternative to Xcode by the folks who make IntelliJ, my Java IDE of choice.
They can do that, huh?
They can. So it's a little weird. You still need Xcode installed.
Yeah, okay. Does it build with Xcode?
Hooks into the Xcode command line tools to build, yeah.
What's the point of this? Just because Xcode's balls? Or I mean, because I know
Well,
some people love
Xcode
Xcode.
doesn't have a lot of the more advanced refactoring tools you might be used to if you used any of JetBrains' other tools, IntelliJ, ReSharper.
Make changes across your code with better
Yeah.
refactoring.
And one of the issues in Xcode is sometimes it can get confused when you do the refactor command and not refactor everything correctly,
Huh.
especially on large projects. So there was a reason for this.
Yeah.
The problem is it's missing interface builder and a few other of the essential things. So I don't know too many people who have just been able to switch over 100%.
Huh. But you've been playing with it, huh?
I've had it for since the beta, which has got to be like 6, 7 months now.
Huh. Hello.
That would be my dog.
I thought your dog was a
Angry.
big. I thought you had a big dog.
I have two dogs. A little
Oh.
dog who likes to tell the mailman to go away.
Well, that's the little dog's job.
Yeah, and the big dog who likes to sleep.
Right.
Tell
Which
the
is,
big and tell the little dog to be quiet.
I gotta tell you, dogs, man, big, especially big
Yep.
dogs that are domestic. That is the life.
I'm so jealous of the dog. You have no idea. He gets up. He has a very tough schedule. Gets up, goes to the bathroom, has a glass of water or a bowl of water, eats, goes right back to sleep. Rough
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll be honest. I did a little bit of that myself this morning. I got up.
Yep.
I participated, if you can call that, in getting Ange and the kids out of the house. Ate a banana and then went back to bed, and then came down here about 20 minutes before we had to start. Read some emails, and that was it. That cold is this cold has just wiped me out.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna split my day, but that's neither here nor there for the show.
Yeah.
All right, so
But I want to pin that. Let's just pin that in the air. When you're done with this, let's circle back to Pomodoro, because I think that's kind of related. So just come back to that in a little bit.
okay. Actually, why don't we come to it now?
Okay.
'Cause it makes more sense.
Oh, all right.
So listeners will know, and Chris, me and you have talked about this off air,
Yeah.
that I was using the Pomodoro technique, but this last week I kind of fell out of it because I was doing a large submission for a client and wrapping up another contract, and the things were a little crazy.
Yeah.
I feel like death. It's very strange. I am so tired, and it's only 12:20 here,
Yeah.
so I will be going right back to the Pomodoro today.
So it was pretty rough getting off of it.
Well, I think what happens is if you don't get up, I got so used to breaking things down into small tasks that without it, I started just saying, "Okay, finish the app,"
Just
or
a huge goal. Huge goal.
right, because I'm pretty new to this project, and they have a giant GitHub issue list, so
Huh.
I basically just dived right in, which was kind of hellish. So it's an interesting experiment because I used to never use the Pomodoro until I started it,
Right.
which makes a lot of sense grammatically.
Yes.
But now I'm almost, I hate to say dependent.
You're hooked.
Yeah, I think I'm hooked.
Huh. So you
And
notice a
I
huge
feel
difference.
awful.
And
I feel,
it's mostly in mental strain.
yeah, like it's 12:20 and I feel like I did a whole day. Now, granted, I've been up since 6. And I've already done a few hours of coding and a few emails and calls. And so actually, I have probably been working 5 hours already.
Yeah.
But I'm just totally drained without it. And I would say anybody who has that problem, it's a silly thing, and you can get a Pomodoro timer for free on literally any platform. I know Chris has recommended a Unity one for Ubuntu.
Yep. I don't remember what
Just
it's called.
try it for a month, and I really think it does improve quality of life overall.
You know, it makes a lot of sense, because one of the life tricks that I have taught myself, so that way I don't stress out a lot, is, I used to wake up when I first started working for myself. I would wake up and think, I have so much to do. And every day at the end of the day, I would be so disappointed at the fact that I didn't get everything accomplished.
Right.
Spent more time doing something else, or, kids ended up needing extra time with this or something like that, right? And so I just wasn't accomplishing these things. And then I started realizing that's just impractical. And really, I just started breaking it down into days. You know what? If I can get these couple things done, if I can get these accomplished and do all my regular stuff, that's good. And that was sort of a way to cope with the fact that I wasn't getting to everything I needed to get to. And this seems like maybe it's a way you kind of break your work stuff up into sprint goals, like little mini micro sprints, where I'm going to sprint for 20, 30 minutes on this. And then I could see how the work sort of falls into these buckets of what fits in these, windows of time. So it's much more easier to kind of break it down, see the patterns, think it through, realize all what you have to do.
Definitely. And one of the keys to the technique is turning off the phone, which I find challenging.
Hmm.
Turning off the email client, the IM, but you will feel 10 times better.
I can see that. And staying off of,
Yeah.
what always gets me now are all the Google pages that have the unread count for Google Plus
Yep.
notifications. I'm
Yep.
so OCD when I see that little number flip. I'm like, I'll click it real quick.
Well, I'm terrible with email. I mean, if it pings, I'm usually replying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't even get me
So,
started on email. Holy schmoly. Now, you had a line entry in here for sunsetting a project. I think this could be really interesting.
so I don't know if this has happened to you, Chris, but a number of the tools or applications I've used, or programs, if you will, Windows fans, have been, quote, sunsetted.
Oh,
Particularly true of
something you
games.
depend on.
Something I depend on.
Okay.
Or it could be, I mean, I wanted to talk about this as something you develop as well.
Okay.
And I'm wondering, have you had the same experience?
I have I fight with when to know when to kill something that I create, that I make.
Right.
And that's a huge struggle because there's a lot of factors when you really start to think about it.
Yeah. And that's,
Like I could
you
think
know,
I could give you a description like, Stoked, right? We ended Stoked a
sure, sure. Which
while
is,
ago.
people who don't know, it's the Star Wars Old Republic podcast that
No,
used to be.
no, Star Trek Online. Star Trek Online.
Oh, that was your first problem. Ooh.
Yeah, well, actually, I mean that was one of the huge things. Like I just didn't see, and my show wasn't based on a tool set. My show was based on a game franchise, right?
Didn't they kill the game?
No, but it really hasn't improved in the way that I wanted to improve, and it's not really developing the type of game I wanted to play, and
Okay.
and it hasn't really built the audience it needs to sustain a podcast that can get, multiple thousands of downloads and high numbers. But it was a really tough decision, because it still had good ratings. People loved it.
Sure.
People used our affiliates because the show was around. There's all those things I had to kind of think about. It's really hard to know when to say, all right, it's time to call it. I still struggle with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've killed 3 applications. Now, all free. I've never killed a paid app.
Okay.
And the hardest one was actually the oldest and crappiest one, which is interesting. It was an app for children for Halloween to find, quote, haunted, little, it was just fake, right? It was a little kitty thing. And you would like find the haunting and tap the ghost and get a little, flashy looking, colorful thing. It was for kids
Huh. I'm surprised
at
there
the
hasn't been
time.
a major trick or treat app where you go around the neighborhood and you check into houses that have the same trick or treat app and get points and stuff. It could be a huge market.
Well, I can tell you why.
Okay.
So parents are very protective these days, more so than when I was the age to be trick or treating.
Oh, yes.
And even my app was cause for concern. I got a few emails because it did have a map and it was based on geolocation. Now this is early iPhone development, so this was before California passed their privacy law, which actually we should talk about, and I totally forgot about. And before really this was out in the open, but there were savvy mothers and fathers out there who knew what was up and were
Right,
saying,
right.
well, how is it pinpointing the location? Does that mean you're getting the location? And it's just, of course, yes, because it was communicating with the server and returning data based on the location.
And you were watching that in real time on a dashboard.
Right. And then there were a few very, shall we say, conservative parents who didn't like the whole ghost thing because it's evil or something.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different conversation, which we're not going to get into, but, whatever. And someone in the chat joking mentioned that, but they're actually correct. It was sad to kill it because it did have a lot of usage. Now it generated 0 revenue.
Mm.
There were no, there were no ads. There was no in-app purchase. There was no fee. It was just free. And I ended up killing it because it was a lot to update. The cost to keep the server running was not a lot, but it was an unnecessary cost. And what was interesting is it would be used heavily during the Halloween season and then never used again until the next Halloween. It was up there for 2 years. I killed it. I got a few emails that following Halloween saying, hey, I used to have this app. There's no updates and it doesn't really work on whatever the new iOS was. I guess 4.3 at the time or something. Yeah, well, because remember, even if the developer pulls the app, if you've downloaded it, you have it.
Right, yeah.
Right. and the server was off, so it just popped a UI error saying, we're sorry, cannot communicate with the server. And I think there was a little note about it being pulled. And yeah, it was tempting because I still had the code for the server to just git push it back up, and say, okay, here you go. But it was the right move to kill it because it was just generating a cost. And I think when I first developed it, I didn't really think, I just thought, okay, let me get the coordinates and return some data. I didn't really think that kids were primarily using it. I knew that they were, but I didn't put two and two together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because you didn't have any mischievous intentions when you did it.
Right. It was just, okay, I need to get their location because, if you're in Somerset, New Jersey, I might return a ghost called, the Haunting Lady of Somerset. I don't remember. They all had like silly, stupid names based on the location. It's it's a little weird, right? I mean, I don't know when you kill things, do you almost regret it? Do you
Oh,
feel
I was just
guilty?
gonna ask you that.
Yeah.
You know, that's tough. I don't regret killing Stoked, because that feels like that was the right move, and that's been pretty much a positive change. I mean, I know folks miss it. I'm trying to think if there has been a show that's ended. There's shows I wish we could still do, but I don't really regret them going away. I mean, like Beer is Tasty was a fun show, but I know people love it. I'd still love to be able to do it.
I like beer.
Yeah. So I know, but I don't really regret. But I think because I spend a considerable amount of time up front, really agonizing over it.
So let me ask you this: since all your content is effectively free, right? I mean, there's ads, but if it were paid, would you feel worse?
Yes and no, because if it was paid, I would have a very obvious. How is this? What is this producing for me in comparison to the other things? Because the thing I always
Right.
have to remember is if I kill a show, that opens up room for me to do another show that could conceivably do better. So for me, if a show's underperforming, it doesn't just cost me in the fact that it actually cost me time and money to make it, but it also costs me in the fact that I could replace it with another show that could actually perform better. That's a
Okay.
hard thing to really, even when you have all the numbers in front of you, there's not really a solid way to make that calculation.
Yeah. I mean, in my case, I felt it a lot easier killing that app because it was not generating revenue and it was just a cost.
Yeah, to me, that seems like a free app is a lot easier to kill.
Right.
Which is why a lot of times when we use certain things or services, we kind of wish we could pay.
Well, that's why I do sometimes worry about how many non-paid things are in my tool chain. Like obviously, old open source stuff, Vim, stuff like that's never going to go anywhere.
Right, right.
But some of the smaller stuff could. And I'm always a little leery of that $0 price tag.
So are you always, quote unquote, shopping for replacements?
I always have an eye out.
But you're not getting distracted and like not learning the current tools you have to the full extent. Because I could see that being an issue where, in order to keep your toe in the water to see what you could replace it with, it's kind of like not committing in a relationship, right? You're not marrying the tool, so you're not getting impregnated because you're still out every now and then, maybe sleeping with another tool from time to time.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty solid with the tools I would use, I'd say. I mean, I'm trying
Yeah.
to think. I mean, the thing I flip-flop the most on is Eclipse versus IntelliJ, but that's mostly by force.
Right, depending on the need of the project.
Yeah, a lot of people like Eclipse, and I don't because of the way I've set up my directories. It doesn't work well with the workspaces concept.
And, the other thing I kind of want to throw into this,
Right.
if you will allow me, is there's sometimes an emotional element to it. Like, so you take Unfilter. Unfilter is, it's not horrible in the ratings, but it's probably the fourth, maybe in the ratings. It also takes, out of all of the shows, the most time to do. I spend
Right.
I wake up like Wednesday at 7 a.m. and I start working on Unfilter till generally about 5 p.m. Later that day, usually with maybe just a break to cook some bacon and take a pee. And that's about all I do. And, that is not sustainable, but I'm trying to transition it into taking about half the day. But right now, it does generate, just the last episode generated some very generous donations. So it generates money that way. So it's an interesting thing for me where a show could maybe be fourth in the ratings, but be number 2 in the revenue generation, right? And that's a really
Right.
tricky thing then to decide, well, I can't just kill it. And even though it takes, so if I had all day Wednesday to say work on another show, I could do quite another show, right? I mean, there's a lot of potential there, a lot of opportunity cost, as it was put in the chat room. But I try to also weigh that with what keeps me interested, what keeps me passionate and motivated. And there's a little bit of that element that I'm factoring in too. And that's not necessarily good business advice.
So it sounds like you're going to kill Unfiltered.
No, I would say like if push came to shove, like if there was a life event where I had to cut back, that would be the first thing to go though.
And you wouldn't consider perhaps offloading the resource constraint by having a different host other than you, right?
I don't think I don't think that could be done. I have built a system to pull in all of these news feeds and clip them and then put them all together. It seems easy when you listen to it, but it's actually, there's a lot of work behind the scenes, and I don't know anybody else that'd be qualified to do it. So it's kind of dependent on me. And then at that point, the part that takes the least amount of time is hosting. That only takes an hour out of my day. It's the editing and the research that takes the most time. And I don't know. It's a tough call.
It's a little strange. I mean, in the Halloween app, the reason I had such a hard time killing it is that was the first thing I had ever produced that got a lot of downloads.
Oh, yeah.
That actually did well, even though it made no money and was in fact costing me money.
And in comparison to things you've probably done later, it was not really that big of a those numbers were not very big, but at the time it was like,
I'm actually. In comparison, it also wasn't very. So one of the big factors why I pulled it is I did it. I had no budget, and it looked terrible. Like I had no design. It looked okay. I shouldn't say terrible, but you could tell it was early iOS design.
Or look at my old videos, right? I mean, they're so rough.
Yeah.
You can tell it's early days.
Like it's Web 2.0 smacked on a phone. There you go.
Yeah. HTML app that's sort of been, yeah.
I mean, it was written natively, but it was...
It looked like it.
Yeah, it just didn't... It's not something I would want online today.
Right. Yeah, I know. I know exactly what you mean. I'm sometimes embarrassed by some of the stuff I have online today.
So I often toy with the idea of bringing it back, just redoing it.
Yeah.
But I just don't know. I mean, I think that's a temptation that a lot of even our listeners will probably feel.
Yeah. Well, like I've had the temptation to restart certain shows that didn't do amazing. Like Jupiter at Night just didn't, it did fine, but it didn't do great. And I've wanted to restart that. I've always wanted to restart Jupiter at Night. I love having a daily show. But, man.
It's a lot of work.
Oh, boy, you have no idea. It is unbelievable. The people that do daily shows, I have so much respect for them. Hardest thing to do. And I've always, so this, to just be a little more frank, this last Wednesday, I'd actually come to the conclusion that I was going to do 2 more episodes of Unfilter and then wrap it. So
really,
yeah.
So is this official? Because
I decided not to, and I'll tell you why. So,
okay.
So first of all, I've been working towards reducing the amount of work it takes to do the show.
Sure.
And I kind of realized the Wednesday that I got all pissed off and decided I was done with it was the easiest Wednesday I had had putting it together. Because, like, first of all, the pressure was gone, right? So it was just, I listened to some hearings that were happening during the day. I clipped other news stories. I, casually went about, made myself a snack. And, it was much more relaxed. And that helped a lot. And the other thing I realized is, sometimes there's a certain value to, I don't know how to put it, but like we got so many good emails and voicemails that week. And I towards the end of the day, I started to do that end of the show, collecting all the feedback. I started playing these voicemails and I started reading these emails, and people really, really love the show. And somebody even donated $100 to the show just to say thank you because they love the show. And it's like there's a real connection there. And I've always kind of monitored the donations it's a true indicator if people really like a show, they donate, and if they can. And so when a show's donations drop off, I know that the core audience is starting to drop off. And when the donations stay steady, it's an indicator, right? Or if we do something good, sometimes we see a pickup in donations. And so these factors are happening at the same time, and I'm looking at the numbers, and the numbers are pretty decent. So the revenues are decent, the numbers are decent. And I kind of just realized I just have to change, what I'm doing. It's an adjustment that I have to make. Maybe dial it back a little bit and stop overcommitting so much, and maybe, reduce in scope what I'm working on, but not totally kill it. And so that's where I'm at now.
Okay, so to be super clear, Unfilter is not canceled.
Right. Right. It's sort of in an evaluation period, but
Because I can feel the hysterical YouTube comments already.
no, it's not canceled.
Okay, let's just get that down. Coda Radio, however, is.
Yeah, right. Well, because everything's done, everything's over.
It's over. Software
right. And
over,
also,
right? So
there's just one thing we cannot get around.
It's negative in the freedom dimension.
You know, I'm doing my act of contrition, some penance. I have to atone for my evil ways.
Is this when you wrote PHP?
No,
Oh.
I was talking more about being negative in the freedom dimension.
So, I mean, I kind of dominated the last end of the when to sunset something conversation, but I guess what I wanted to relay there is sometimes you don't have to kill it. Sometimes you just have to reduce in scope, as long as you can reduce in scope in a way that won't piss people off. That's a tricky thing to do.
I think that gets harder and harder with software.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean,
because
what I was thinking in your
platform-
case
yeah.
is if there was a way to reduce what you had to do server side, reducing your cost, because that's really where your cost is going to be at.
But not really, though, right? Because especially on mobile, the platforms change. They change the rules. There's a constant need to keep updating.
It's true. Yeah.
Shameless plug: CodeJournal for Mac just finally updated on the Mac App Store.
Hey, congrats.
After 10,000 years.
CodeJournal app. Go search the App Store for it.
Yep.
Or
So,
CodeJournalapp.com.
but there's a constant need, and there's a lot of overhead with dealing with any platform's App Store if you're doing it that way. So it's not quite as easy as, just.
Or think about enterprise software, where you have a business contract in place and you've developed something and they have expectations. I mean, that's a completely different thing too.
Or if you have an SLA, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, now, see, this is where it gets really tricky, because have you ever been in the position where you wanted to walk, but you're kind of not able to, either for technical reasons or an agreement or anything like that?
Yeah, I've been on projects that were, let's say, death marches.
Yeah.
That, everybody kind of knows that it's not going to succeed, but technically we're obligated to finish it out.
Right. And it's just like, when I hate working on something when you know the end result is just really not going to be what anybody wants. It's not going to be what the expectations are, and that's just rough.
It really is a little rough. So that's really where I wanted to go with this. The movement towards less client-side software and more web applications where you have users subscribing to your software.
Uh-huh.
When people kill those, it can be really rough.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, even a minor disruption is GitHub is a huge problem for me, and same for Atlassian's Bitbucket or
Right.
HipChat or any of their other tools, because I'm pretty.
Hello EC2.
Yeah, hello EC2. I mean, I would say with Atlassian and EC2 and GitHub, I'm pretty well invested in those ecosystems.
Yeah.
And if they were to, really, if any one of them were to vanish tomorrow, oddly enough, EC2 might be the most painless, because I wouldn't necessarily be on the hook.
Right.
And that's just due to the way contracts work. But I think, if Atlassian were to pull all of its products, including GitHub, I'd have a serious problem. Because that would be, a full archive of my work of issue trackers gone overnight. So it's strange in this world of recurring subscriptions rather than purchase prices. What does killing a project mean now? So does it mean the website 404s? And I'm not sure. I don't have an answer here.
Yeah.
To me, it's a lot.
I've been involved in services where what they'll usually do, especially if it's a beloved service, is they'll give a super, super long window. Like, in 6 months, we're going to shutter the service. So prepare to, start now, export your stuff. And sort of give them a window.
But what about enterprise level services, right?
Yeah.
That are more data centric and a little, it's really easy to switch from Flickr to Google Plus or, one of those type of silly image services to another.
Instagram to Flickr.
Right. That's probably, thank you. But what if it's something really core to a business or some kind of professional need?
Well, you only get in that gig, that racket, if that's what you're up for, I guess, right? I mean, and let's be
Right.
clear, that's why a lot of enterprises go with large companies, is to avoid this. And I should also point out that a lot of times when I go in and I'm facing some sort of weird application, it's because the developer who they had expected just to support it infinitely walked, and they're left in a lurch. And a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, I'll say, let's buy a commercial package then. Or I'll say, I know a guy, let's bring him in. It kind of depends on the situation. But, I mean, that's why they do that. That's why enterprise software costs $1 jillion per seat.
It's kind of a difficult thing. It's, I mean, I'm just thinking the effect of killing, just not me, but lots of developers, if Atlassian killed all of its products tomorrow, would be catastrophic, right? Because think they have Jira, they have a bunch of analytics stuff for web developers. I mean, it would be, I think, would dominate Hacker News for a month.
Yeah.
So I don't know where this leaves us, but very sad.
You know what we should do? I kind of have a solution to it if you're up for it. It's a challenge, though.
What's the challenge?
Well, maybe instead of ending the show, we should keep doing the show and keep telling these people how to do it right. That way we can fix the universe for everyone else. I mean, you and I will be under the bus because we'll be the warriors up front fighting the fight.
That's right.
We will be the heroic sacrifice. But somebody's got to do it.
You know what? Let's keep doing the show.
All right, at least for a little while.
At least for a little while, right?
Yeah. And then maybe once we've solved all the world's problems, we can call it a day.
I think once we've got, a peace agreement between Israel and Palestine, we can stop.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Definitely. I don't want to go.
If we can pull that off.
Too big with the goal here. Just something small, something
Okay.
we can push out in like 3 months.
Hey,
right?
we got Pomodoro on our side.
We got Pomodoro on the side.
Now, you'd mentioned you want to talk about a privacy.
Yeah,
law.
so this isn't in the notes, but California has passed a law for app developers and other type of mobile in particular, but also web app developers.
Like an app privacy law?
Yeah, it's a little weird. You must, and I don't know. So I don't know how it will affect folks who aren't in California.
Well, wouldn't it matter if it? Okay. Yeah, because it could affect folks that just sell apps in California.
I guess, right? But how would you really don't have control over that? So they're targeting iOS and Android apps in particular. So really, you pick, to sell in the United States, not California. But the idea.
But I think back, there's car emissions that have changed nationwide because of laws in California. So you never know.
Yeah, I mean, at its most basic level, your app must have a privacy policy that adheres to a few principles. Now, to be fair, the principles aren't that radical. In fact, if you're not adhering to these principles, it's probably because you're selling people's data. I could see a need for this to be a law, but it's weird that it's a state law and not like a national law or an EU mandate or something like that.
That's because they can't get it done at that level.
Yeah. Because, it's fair enough, right? Don't track personal identifiable data and correlate it to the person and sell it. I mean, that's a very, very simplified version of it. But you do need a privacy policy, and it does need to be reasonable.
Okay. That's probably not too tough.
Well...
Oh, is it? You think?
Not tough for people like me who sell software for money, no, because it has no bearing on me at all right now. The question is, there are a lot of apps that just straight up sell your data. Right? I mean,
they're doing... Oh, yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah. The reason for this law is because they're doing it, and
yeah.
A lot of those apps happen to be targeted at children.
Right. Yeah, there's been a lot of headlines about that recently.
So that's what this is in reaction to, and it's a pretty heavy-handed reaction. If they can enforce this law to developers outside of California, it'll be like their admission standards that you mentioned. It'll be a de facto, law, basically, de facto national standard, which would mean it will also bleed over, and the American developers it'll just be the way they deal with Europe and Asia and all of that too.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if this is going to hurt certain businesses, though. Because there's been a lot of money poured into these super tracking systems that track you down between multiple apps, and websites and Facebook.
Well, and I just covered something on TechSnap in last week's TechSnap in the roundup during Black Friday in 2012, there was a retail chain that has put micro Wi-Fi access points at different ends of each aisle, and they're lower powered so that they roughly only broadcast about a window around their both sides of that aisle. And what they do is, as your MAC ID, even if you don't join the Wi-Fi, if your your chipset is just kind of communicating with the AP to get its SSID and things like that, it registers in their database each aisle and roughly where in the aisle you were at. And then, they use that as sort of in-store analytics in real time.
Sure.
And that's a form of tracking now that they're looking at and saying, is this okay?
So I know a lot of folks perhaps in the comments in the chat will be like, oh, it's another mobile thing. But it's being applied to mobile today, but it's not, universally for mobile, right? Like this could apply to all software.
Mm-hmm.
It's now mobile is a thing that really annoyed the legislators in California. But it doesn't mean that desktop applications, web apps aren't going to be targeted by this too. It's just that the people they're going after happen to be mobile developers. And to be fair, the examples they're citing are the scummy of the scum, right?
Yeah, the worst case example.
They have a point. There is a lot of, I don't want to single anybody out, but those games that are just clones of, real traditional board games that are now free.
Yeah.
Anything that ends in with friends.
Oh, ouch.
Their business practices could, at one point, have been considered afoul of this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you have one of those apps and you tether your iPhone and you have a developer thing and you can actually do this, bust open Wireshark or some kind of equivalent and just take a look.
See where it's going. See what's talking to.
See all the concurrent, constant network requests it's making. Start tracing the IPs, and people have done this. You can get pretty down and dirty. It was a common practice. It's not a good thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm surprised that California did it before Europe, because the EU tends to be much more aggressive with this kind of thing. Although they do have the right to delete now, don't they?
The EU is too busy focusing on cookies.
Yeah, they have a weird hate-on for Google right now.
Yeah, and cookies. Yeah. Tracking cookies. What's up with tracking cookies?
Which, to be honest, I think these mobile apps are much more dangerous because they can actually call a GPS.
Yeah.
Get your lat long. Like, to me, that would be priority one.
And there's been examples of ones that are a little more aggressive. They can, even on Android, turn on your microphone. Turn on your microphone just to get a little audio sample.
Yeah.
Not doing any IDs. They're anonymous audio samples, though, so don't worry about it.
I mean, that would probably run afoul of.
Yeah, Google considers that. Google considers that malware and pulls it when they find it.
And I don't think you're allowed to do that on the App Store either.
No, you can't do it on the App Store. No.
Interesting. And a lot of folks in the chat are mentioning the GitHub thing. So that's a non-story. That's like the Java story.
The GitHub search that exposed passwords?
Yeah. So they didn't expose anything. If you're dumb enough to put your SSH key in your source code repo, then you're just dumb.
Is that what happened?
Yeah. Being stupid is its own punishment. That's not a story.
Yeah, that's Darwin security.
So here's what happened. A bunch of people put as plain text, just as a string in their code, SSH keys, API keys, all kinds of keys to anything. Keys to, let's say you're using GitHub, for example. They would put the key, their API key, their unique API key to GitHub in their source code. That's your fault if you put it as public, right? Or if you don't take it out before you push. There's nothing to do with GitHub. In fact, GitHub is trying to tell you that you're stupid. Like, I don't mean to be too hard, but that is not a story at all.
It's funny because it's not really being reported like that. It's being reported as GitHub exposing. It's being
reported as the same thing. Java's blowing up the world. Right?
Yeah.
GitHub added a search feature.
Right.
Which makes your mistake much more visible and easy to find. That's all. Someone's putting in the chat, .gitignore. Yes, if you used gitignore properly, this would never happen.
Dun, dun, dun.
It's an easy mistake to make, but
I do get really worn out by the tech press. The tech press, let's just be clear. The tech press covers stuff that, at the end of the day, generally 80% of it doesn't change anybody's lives in any conceivable way, like impactful way. Whereas like when there's a news story about something happening in Mali or hostages somewhere, that is really actually affecting lives right as they're reporting it. So there's a slight difference there. So what the tech press does is everything becomes a war. Everything's a hack. Everybody's, this and that. There's like these extremisms. The patent battle continues between Apple and Samsung. You know what? Everybody's been suing each other over patents since the patent system came into existence. If you go back in history, the TV folks were doing it to other TV folks. The radio, it's just how it's always been. But now this tech press takes it and makes it these historic battles. And it's the same thing with Java, and it's the same thing with this GitHub thing, because I'm reading this story. It was the user's fault, essentially.
If GitHub didn't say anything, this would not be a story. And what they're trying to do is they're being responsible. They're saying, listen, you made a mistake. I suggest you fix it.
Yeah.
Right? So are you going to then chastise them for doing the right thing? That they are not responsible for your mistake. That's like saying, oh, I had a mistake in my code and my app crashed, so I'm going to go ahead and, complain about GoDaddy, where the code was running. This is a non-story.
Yeah.
This is nothing. I must read about 10, 20 articles a night from the tech press. Say about 15 of them are just hyperbole.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of where, a lot of our shows, we try to strain the crap out.
It's just really like, when Gatekeeper came, OS 10 doesn't allow any non-App Store apps. Well, no, that's not true. They always go for the most extreme to get the clicks.
Yeah, Gatekeeper's been a total non-issue.
Right. I mean, it's a minor annoyance. You have to click one checkbox.
Yeah.
Now, in the future, they might change it, and this might be a different conversation.
It'll be a big issue.
How many times have I read articles that say Linux totally exploited or Linux kernel exploit, and it's been, well, if you didn't update your kernel in 3 years, and
yeah,
it's like I understand why those headlines are attractive. I understand why folks in the chat are interested in it, but it's not. It's not the way. Read the whole story, not the headline. It's really, GitHub hasn't done anything wrong. Now, in the past, they have, right? They had a mass assignment bug which caused problems, and that was their fault. And I don't think Code Radio was a show back then, but I would have talked about it. But what is this? Don't worry, the world is not going to end.
Yeah, this is a great example of a headline. Website hosting Linux kernel hacked. Don't worry, the world is not going to end.
Yeah, it's really, really silly. I mean, I'm sure Android fans are used to the thousands of stories that every Android phone in the world is infected with malware.
Right.
I mean, how many times has that been reported?
Yep. Well, and it's like just like on Windows, when they were, now conveniently all the major antivirus manufacturers have apps for Android.
But I feel that this does a disservice to the tech community as a whole, because if you're always hearing extremes and hyperbole, you get desensitized.
Right. That's what's wrong with politics too. I mean, right? Everybody in America just kind of tunes out because, there's when you do tune in, you just hear these extreme polar opposites that just don't make any logical sense.
A great example: the recent Java issues, right? The more moderate, the right way to say it would have been, disable Java in the web browser and make sure your local Java is up to date.
Right.
The way it was reported was delete Java anywhere you find it.
Yeah.
So I understand how it could be upsetting, and I don't mean to be super hardcore, but GitHub GitHub could have said nothing and just let you be punished for your own mistake. Seriously, they could have done nothing.
Right, kind of like, Google indexes open IP cameras, printers, you can...
I believe Google will index open GitHub pages. That's what they're afraid of. That's what they're trying to warn you about. They added this new feature, and it could be indexed by Google. They're trying to protect you, to say, if you have a secret API key in a project that's not private, you really need to take that out.
Yeah.
Or put in a placeholder.
Welcome to the internet. Now you need to behave.
Yeah, just calm down. It's all going to be okay.
Should we get to the tool of the week?
Yes. So the tool of the week is Smart Git HG.
Say what?
Yes, I think someone wrote in about this, and I finally got around to trying it.
Cool.
So I've been using it on Windows, but it is Linux, Mac, and Windows compatible.
Oh, very nice.
It's just written in everybody's malware-ridden language, Java. I love Java. I take it back.
It looks good.
But it is actually very nice. I know if you're watching the video, Chris has the diff tool up, which is actually,
Yeah.
and this is not free. If you're open source, you can use it for free forever.
Oh, that's cool.
If you're doing commercial apps, you can use it for free for I think it's like 30 or 60 days, and then you have to pay a license.
That's fair.
The license is costly. I think it's like $70.
That's not that bad.
But for a tool, if you're going to use this as your source control client, your merge client, you're probably going to make that, just in time pretty quickly. Now, I'm not a big Git client kind of guy. The reason I'm using it is because on Windows, Git is not very good.
What's that GitHub client that ties right in with Explorer? Have you tried that?
Yeah. What is it? I tried it a long time ago. I didn't really like it.
I'm totally blanking on the name, but I know we've had people written into the show recommending it before, but I can't remember what it's called.
I don't remember either.
Maybe the chat room might know, but
I think it's Tortoise Git.
No, it was like Git Explorer. I don't know. I thought it sounded very generic. That's why I forgot.
I don't know. I've been
Oh no,
using
you're right. You're right. You're right.
Oh, okay.
It was right.
I've been using GitHub's Git client, but it's very GitHub specific. And as I think I've mentioned 8,000 times, a lot of my stuff is not on GitHub.
Yeah.
This is nice. Now it's a Java app, so it's gonna look kind of the same on every platform. But what's really interesting is that I didn't have to install Java to install this, so apparently they're packaging it or something.
That's a good idea. Hopefully they keep it updated, because I'm really worried it might get exploited.
Dude, you're just like chugging the haterade. I love it. See what happens when you attack my GitHub? I get all upset.
It's funny because I come on this show and you're like, it's not so bad, you guys. Everybody just needs to calm down about Java. And then I go on TechSnap and Alan tells me about Red October, where they exploited Java for the last 7 years to get complete access to all of these systems.
So Red October is a different story, right? So
no, I know.
And part of it is you don't have to worry if you keep your stuff up to date.
Right.
So
patch your stuff.
I patch everything as soon as the little notification comes up. I'm pretty religious about patching. But yeah, Red October is the best virus name ever.
And incredible. If you guys haven't seen the TechSnap episode,
yeah, that was pretty good.
Red October Hunts You, I think it was.
Yeah, it was last week's, right? It's the last one I heard.
Yeah. Amazing. This thing is, it was able to jump from the computer to mobile devices.
It seems to evolve or to use a specific payload for its target, which is really the killer.
They gave it the ability for the developers to add modules once it's already out in the field, so they could just add. So when when the new version of Windows Phone 8 of mobile came out, they just deployed a new module for it, and then it was able to spread to those phones, and it's just so incredible.
Well, really, I mean, I was listening to TechSnap, and I hate to say this one, I was kind of impressed. Not that I think malware is a good thing. I obviously don't.
I know, right? Yeah, it's kind of an amazing achievement, though.
Yeah, just the pure technical accomplishment that Red October represents.
That, as whippersnappers, that was at best sci-fi. I mean, it would be so improbable. It'd be so silly when you'd see a computer virus spreading from a desktop computer to somebody's mobile phone. I mean, that was silly.
When I read the first few stories about it, I didn't believe them. I thought it was just, again, more hyperbole. Yeah. I had to keep looking it up and being like, hang on. It can't just jump to a mobile phone. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty. And to hear Alan break it all down, because he did a good job of sort of...
Yeah, he did a good job.
Kind of getting all the juicy bits and then regurgitating them.
The only thing he should have done that he didn't do, and I don't mean to criticize Alan, but you should have done it in Sean Connery's voice.
Well, on the live stream, in between segments, we were cracking off some Sean Connery.
He should have been like, "Oh, Red October, I can't do it." But...
See, this is why people got to watch live, because we were cracking those off. But my best Sean Connery, I got it. You want me to bust it out?
Do it.
You win this one, Trebek.
Yes.
You win this round, Trebek.
You know the only person who could save this from Red October, John McAfee.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need to go rescue him from Belize.
He's back. He's in like California or
States?
Kansas or something. Yeah.
The man's got 9 lives. How did he?
Now he just wants to settle down and relax.
And not be hunted by South American police?
Yeah.
Or Central American. All right.
Well, so there we go.
All right. So yeah, I would definitely encourage you to try it Smart Git, especially if the command line is a bit scary for you.
Which is this is kind of a weird URL, syntevo.com, but we have a link in the show notes.
Well, they're old school, so they're not doing the the dedicated site per project. They have a whole company.
Yeah. Oh, that's weird.
They're more enterprisey than me.
Hey, before we run, I want to remind folks that they can support the network and this show by going over to jupiterbroadcasting.com and clicking on our affiliate links at the bottom of the website. Or you can lock in some monthly funding. We have a link right here on the front page for $7 a month for our Amazon. That's through the Amazon payments. You don't like the PayPal? Got you covered with the Amazon. We also have some PayPal buttons there. And on the donate page, there's one-time donations and other various monthly amounts. Thank you to everybody who supports these shows and listens to me whine. And go pick up Code Journal at
codejournalapp.com or the App Store if you like waiting.
If you like your applications very, very slow cooked. It's the crock pot of app stores.
If you go to like a steak restaurant and are like, I'd like it just burn the damn thing, that's where you want to go.
All right, where should people find you throughout the week? In between
They can
shows.
find me at Twitter at Jumanuka or on Google+.
Oh, that's right. Of course, to make things easy, we have links to those in the show notes. I want to encourage you to join us live so you can hang out with us with our awesome chat room over at jblive.tv, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern on Mondays. Or you can join us at jblive.info for the audio stream. And the show's available for download just hours afterwards. Also, we have the RSS feeds you can subscribe to and get the show weekly automatically. We send it out through the tubes. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning to this week's episode of Coder Radio. See you right back here next week.